All right, counting down in five, four, three, two, and one. Josh, welcome to Cam Talks.
Thank you.
I know it's an epic introduction. Joshua, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, people are never going to know who you are because they don't know who I am. So Josh, why don't you give us a very quick rundown? Tell us, who are you? What do you do? How did we even meet?
Yeah, great. So you've obviously already said that I'm Josh. And my role, the reason we've met is because of my role with a charity called Teenage Helpline, which I'm the founder and CEO of. And I founded the charity 13 years ago now, and have been on a wild journey ever since, what I'm sure we'll talk about in a little while. But we connected, as you found Teenage Helpline, and we exchanged a few messages, and that's how we got to know each other.
It's amazing because Joshua, you're not that old. Tell us how old you are.
I'm 26 now.
You're 26, but you just said 13 years ago you started Teenage Helpline.
So almost 13 years ago in July. So I was 14 at the time when I launched the charity the
You
first
were
time round.
14 when you launched a charity.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Joshua, what 14-year-olds are launching charities? How did that even come into your life back then?
I mean, if you speak to my mum now, she'll tell you that I was always an old man, even when I was young. But I really struggled when I was growing up. I struggled with mental health. I struggled with coming to terms with my sexuality. I struggled with lots of things that lots of young people struggle with when they're growing up as a teenager. And it was probably easier to get support then when I was growing up than it is now, because there was less pressure on all of the services. But there wasn't anything that I wanted to reach out to. So it was all run by grown-ups. And when you're 14, grown-ups are really scary. Um, and so I did get myself sorted as well as I could. And I just felt like I wanted to be somebody that other young people could reach out to. Um, and I started Teenage Helpline, funnily enough, as some kind of agony aunt style blog. And did I predict that this would happen? No, I didn't. I thought I'd just be tapping away on my computer at home, answering people's questions, and it's just kind of grown over time from what it was then to what it is now.
So what exactly is Teenage Helpline?
It's a very, very good question. So, Teenage Helpline is a peer mentoring or peer support service. You can call it either. And we've developed over time to run a support program that allows young people across the UK to reach out to young people of a similar age to themselves. So,
Wow.
all of our peer mentors are aged 16 to 25. And any young person reaching out to us for support knows that they're reaching out to somebody that they hopefully will find relatable or easier to talk to. And our service can be many things. It can be a friendly conversation with someone who just needs a friendly conversation. It can be early intervention support for somebody who needs something a bit more structured, but either doesn't know that they need to access it yet, doesn't know how to access it, or is waiting to access it and on a waiting list. And we can just kind of keep them going. Um, or like I said, we can just be that friendly person that they talk to about low level issues, and they don't feel like there's anybody else to talk to about it.
Mm. And obviously, you've experienced the benefits of speaking to someone around your sort of age group. What is the generational differences between, let's just say, the slightly more mature in society and those who are slightly younger? Is it purely a environmental thing? Is it a situational thing? Is it the way they communicate? How would you define the differences between the generations?
Um, I think, and you might chuckle because I know we've highlighted that I'm only 26, but as I get older, I actually see those differences very differently. So young people don't feel like the older generations understand, or that they don't get it because they've never been through it. And actually, the reality is they do understand and they do get it. And the older I get, the more I understand now, that when I was going through all of this stuff as a young person, I could have spoken to my mum or dad about it. I could have spoken to a teacher because they did get it. Um, I think what doesn't help us so much now is how quickly things progress. So social media, technology, all of those things that have developed so quickly in the last, even in the last couple of years, let alone the last 15, 20 years. And there is a complete misunderstanding of what young people get up to on these things, how these tools can be used. There's also a misunderstanding of the dangers of these tools. I think sometimes the older generation could be slightly more overprotective because they've been less exposed to what it's like to be a young person on those tools. Um, but I really think there isn't a huge amount of difference. I think it's just a perception of there is a huge difference, and it makes it hard for the young people to reach out because they perceive that the older generation don't understand. But also, I think it makes it harder for the older generation to reach out and offer support because sometimes I think they don't understand as well because lots has changed and times, times change very quickly.
So when you speak to older people who you obviously want to express that need to communicate with younger people, how do you normally what's the story you tell them to inspire them?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the first thing I'll say is whenever I talk to individuals kind of older than me about Teenage Helpline and what we do, um, there's an instant light bulb moment. There's no needing to convince them that what we do is needed. Everybody, everybody gets that there is this difference and that young people find it difficult to reach out to adults. And I think when I articulate my story about how I grew up and the struggles that I faced and why Teenage Helpline or why I feel that Teenage Helpline is so important, it's not difficult for me to get people to understand, that there is a real need for what we do.
Mm.
Um, so if I'm honest, I don't have to try hard to inspire people to get behind what we're trying to do here at Teenage Helpline. But I do talk to lots of parents in my day job. So obviously, I'm a volunteer with Teenage Helpline. I have a day job too, um, who speak to me about the work that I do, and they do come and speak to me. In fact, I had a request today to run a talk on how parents can understand teenagers' language and get or be more connected to their teenagers so that they feel like they can offer the support that they need. And it's those kind of sessions that really opens maybe the older generation's eyes when they realize it's not that difficult. We're not that far apart. We do understand each other. We just sometimes use different words or talk a slightly different language or use different tools like social media. And as soon as we break down those barriers, it's much easier for them to start connecting and looking out for each other.
So Teenage Helpline obviously is there for younger people, and if they want to, speak to somebody of their own age. But is there anything you can offer for parents of kids that might be struggling?
Yes, so our website itself is written, I would say, from the perspective of a young person. And we are doing more, I would say, in that space. Look at the resources on our website, and so parents can have a look at our website and all the information and understand some of those difficulties that young people might be facing and get more information about them. Um, but equally, we have had some success stories where parents have reached out to our mentors and said, my child is going through this, or I'm facing this situation with my child. Can you offer me any advice? And what I like about that is they're actually asking someone of that demographic to help them step into their child's shoes to be able to support them through that difficulty. And whilst whilst that's not what we intended the helpline to be, it's a very there are some very positive success stories where that's been hugely beneficial for a parent to come out and speak to us and say, I really don't know what to do. Can you just help me out a little bit here?
Mm. Josh, I think this is so powerful, and I mean, to have a sort of a niche with young people in mental health, but now also seeing the benefits of building a bridge towards the parents. I think that's one of the reasons why young people do struggle to feel like they're supported, because maybe their parents just don't understand them and don't understand the world they live in. Would you say that there is sort of the common reason why young people are struggling these days? Is there anything that you see in your job that you think, that's something that parents need to know about?
I think I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I think social media is a huge thing. I think I listen to I don't think I know I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of information around, the dangers of social media and things that are going on. And, it is a big scary world and it changes every day. I've got three younger brothers who are 14, 13, and 11, although I get that wrong all the time, so I may be wrong. And what they use social media for now is totally different to what I used social media for when I was growing up as their, at their ages. They use it for a lot more gaming. They're talking to people online through Fortnite and games like that that I never would have done as a young person because I don't know those people and I only ever engage with people that I think I did anyway. Engage with those people that only I knew on social media. So I think there are challenges that young people face through social media that are very hard for some people who haven't grown up around that to understand. One of the common things I see is things around body image and Instagram, right? With lots of supermodels and celebrities posting holiday pictures of themselves looking a certain way and the impact that that has on young people and their mental health. Um, Cyberbullying is also a huge one, and that's one that we've known about for years. I mean, we spoke about cyberbullying when I was at school, but it's still a huge issue. And gone are the days when you could leave school and the bullying was left behind, and now it follows you around everywhere. So I think social media is a huge issue that maybe lacks some understanding as well between the different generations that makes it hard to get support with.
Do
And I
you
think
think?
the other one, I mean, oh,
Oh, sorry, just finish
go
off
on.
your, yeah, please finish off.
Oh, I was gonna say the other one that is slightly more alarming, I would say, and I read the headlines a lot, is just looking at the headlines around crime and young people and some of the crime that they're getting involved in, knife crime, gang crime, drug crime. That's always been around. We know that's always been around, but I think it's much more in our faces now as well, and it's much more easy to become exposed to um, those types of crime through the connectedness that we have with the internet, social media, having news at our fingertips, all of that kind of stuff.
So it seems to me like the dangers of social media, obviously having your entire life online, and as you said, everything stays with you even after school. The dangers are terrifying and would make any parent want to ban TikTok, ban Instagram, ban Discord, ban their kids from even touching a computer. But I think the reality is that we know that, there's plenty of careers that can be established online. In fact, I'd argue that if you're not able to use social media, if you're not able to use computers and understand the technology, you're doing your children a disservice by not helping them sort of take part in this digital world. Do you see that there's a reluctance to support people online, young people that maybe want to make content, they want to put themselves online, but maybe they seem too young to be putting all this out there, and there is a danger associated with that. But the other danger is, of course, they're not allowing them to grow in the digital space. I mean, do you feel like there's a lacking of education around children online? Oh, I didn't hear that.
Um, I totally agree with you. I think there's huge benefit. Oh, sorry, I think my internet's cut out slightly there.
We're back.
I We're back. Good. I definitely agree with you. I think there are huge benefits to exposing young people to all of these different tools, especially with the way that careers are going in the future. The point you make is absolutely valid. If you don't have skills around technology, who knows how successful that will allow you to be, what cap that will put on you in the future. I think I think you've hit the nail on the head that it's really about education, but education at all levels and all generations around the benefits and the positives of social media and technology, but also an understanding of the dangers and how to avoid getting yourself into those dangerous areas. So if there is a 10-year-old young person who really loves making videos and using that technology, harness it and let them do it, but maybe be more selective about where they post them, or maybe even be selective about allowing them to post them.
Mm.
They're still building those skills because you're finding ways to, get them to make videos and share them with the family, for example, instead of posting them on a TikTok channel.
Mm.
Um, there is definitely a perception around follow account and all of this stuff that is a bit of a painful topic, I think, for some, maybe. But I do think that we've lost the sense of what's skill building, what's education, to actually what's fame, what's popularity, what can I get out of this? And we've had the boom where lots of young people have made huge amounts of money through YouTube channels, TikTok groups, other apps that are out there, Discord gaming, all of that kind of stuff. And that's probably quite a false reality for most now, because that peak has probably happened and those people that made lots of money did then, and now there's lots of people doing it, so they're less likely to make so much money. But we've got these role models that are out there who have done some really great stuff and have benefited from it hugely, and that's what young people are looking at because they're the people that they follow and aspire to be. But it's helping, the education piece is about helping them build those skills in a way that's safe for them too.
Mm.
There's lots of other tools. If we don't talk about technology, people might be interested in um, racing, go-kart racing. Look at some of our Formula One champions that started very young go-karting, but they wouldn't be out on the road driving a car because it's not safe, right? So they're in a controlled environment, practicing to drive a go-kart, and it's probably the same approach we need to take with some of this stuff, which is harness their skills and let them learn. But if they're young and not aware of the dangers yet, so they might get themselves into dangerous situations, do it in a controlled way that allows, it doesn't stop them, it doesn't hold them back, but doesn't necessarily expose them to such dangerous situations.
It's really interesting because you obviously use the comparison of go-karting. Well, racing's been around for hundreds of years, and in whatever form. And so it feels to me like the concept of social media is so new, that the older generation, the schools, the parents, the government who's supposed to set curriculum, these people actually don't have the understanding in order to educate young people about social media. So do you think there is a responsibility for the influencers themselves, who have a large fan base, to create an educational program to show their followers truly what it's like, and dare I say, arm them, to sort of fight, or to not be affected by the negatives? Because trolling is something that obviously we'd grown up knowing that the dangers of there's people online that can hurt you. But until you become an influencer, you actually don't know what it feels like to have someone come after you, and death threats. And I'm in no way an influencer, but I have had crazy people message me, and it's not until you deal with a crazy person, that you realize that there's crazy people in this world, and that actually you can't just treat everyone with kindness and compassion when that person is a stranger who is hounding you on the internet. And the only thing you can possibly do is to, well, I don't know, I guess this is why knowing what these influencers do, when they get thousands and thousands, of messages. I reached out to a friend of mine who is an influencer when I got this one particular crazy person. And I will say crazy, and I don't mean crazy in a they're not mentally ill. They're for whatever reason they decide that your inbox is their space to say what they want to you. I told my friend this, and he said, "Oh no, look at my crazy list. I have thousands and thousands of people messaging me every day. And the nice ones, he'll get back to the nice ones and say thank you very much for the compliment. But you have some of them who just want to shout hatred and abuse. And it wasn't until I had seen the inbox of an influencer, that I actually became very much more happy about hitting that block button. Before, I felt guilty hitting block, because I was like, oh, maybe I should talk to them, keep talking to them. And the advice that I
Yeah.
was given was never talk to them. You know, if they're nice to you, they're respectful to you, then you can engage with them. But if they're not, and they start on this crazy little line of da 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 da, then you just got to hit block. And so I do feel in a way that influencers have a responsibility towards the younger generation to say, hey, look, if you want to be an influencer, these are the things you're going to encounter, and this is how I personally deal with them. But it just seems to me there's no pressure on influencers to reveal the truth and what goes on behind the cameras.
I absolutely agree with you. Again, sounds like we're very much on the same page. I think it all comes down to role modeling, and in all areas, we look up to role models. Whoever we are, whatever we aspire to be, we look up to role models, and all role models have a responsibility to be realistic about what they're encouraging people to do or to become or to aspire towards. And I don't think it's any different for influencers. And sometimes I struggle. I'll put my hands up. I do spend quite a bit of time scrolling through TikTok in my spare time. It's quite a nice downtime activity to do when you haven't got much else going on. And I have seen videos, mainly in the US, but obviously we watch them a lot over here in the UK too, of people making light of individuals who have tracked them down and have broken into their properties. We had the family in the UK who were very popular on TikTok, and I think they had their car set on fire in front of their house. And they had a young child sleeping in a bedroom next to where the car was on fire. And sometimes these situations are portrayed seriously, like I think the car fire was, but sometimes like people breaking into each other's houses and pranking each other and all of this kind of stuff. And where does that line draw between what you're doing is really inappropriate or what you're doing is just funny and between two friends?
Hmm.
Um, we make light of it in through these role models. And what it actually does is it has the opposite effect. It encourages people to want to be involved in that because, oh, it's funny when something like that happens. And if you're a young person, 10, 11, 12, 13, and your risk aversion mindset hasn't fully developed, you're still slightly immature about certain things, and you start finding that stuff funny, you grow up not building a tolerance to actually that's really risky and that's really dangerous. And you find that people start putting themselves in those situations because it's funny. And oh, they had a laugh doing it, so I want to have a laugh doing it. And I think you're right. I think people in positions of power, which these influencers are, right, they've got sometimes multi-million followers looking at everything that they do and watching their lives, have a responsibility to make sure that all of those millions of people watching them see both sides of how it can be. There are some real positives and some really good sides of vlogging and documenting your life and sharing all of those experiences you have, because it opens people's eyes to, oh, I didn't know I could do that, and let me go and try that, and now I found something amazing that I want to do.
Hmm.
But it also kind of shields them sometimes from the dangers, and we should be opening their eyes to those as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, 20 years ago, the newspapers and the TV channels had all of the attention, and they were regulated, and there's sort of channels that you can go down if they've, been spreading misinformation or perhaps have a different agenda. And today the social media is very highly unregulated, and every content creator has the ability to do and say and act however they want. And, although I'm not necessarily in favor of legal regulation. I am in favor of, organizations and pressure to be put onto these, not necessarily pressure, but opportunities given to people online by, the people that should be responsible for young people's well-being, which is still fundamentally the schools. And despite the
Yeah.
government's attempts to distance themselves from the responsibility of young people, and almost give it all to the schools with no extra money, no extra incentive. But it does seem to me like, organizations like Teenage Helpline are starting to sort of get given a bit more, I guess, responsibility. And because of the what you guys do, I feel like more support needs to be given to you. You are a young founder. You've done this since you were literally a teenager. There's no one that understands these things more than you, and yet I'm guessing funding is probably one of your biggest challenges. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been relatively low key for the last few years, so we've been okay with kind of low levels of funding. But we've built over 300 case studies of how we support young people to really learn about what we're doing, and we're really ready to go now and push what we do out to as many young people as possible. But to do that, we need support, we need partners, we need funding, um, and we also need to feel like we're being taken seriously. So, yeah, I won't go on a political tirade, but I see lots of stuff on social media around the recent budget announcement. Was it a week or two ago? And there was not much in there around mental health provision for young people or support for young people. And what I'm finding is it's organisations like Teenage Helpline or the sector, the charitable sector, that's starting to well, it's not starting to, it has been for however long, but is really having to pick up the slack of all of the failings in lots of different areas. And the pressure is really mounting. I mean, if you look at CAMS, which is, the mental health service for young people, um, waiting lists in some areas are astronomical. And you're asking young people to wait for sometimes years to access support that they could do with in, you know, you could do with it immediately. The dangers of that are immense. Um, I think I said to you when we met, when we first connected, I lost my dad back in 2021, and I'm quite a mature adult now, and I run Teenage Helpline. I've got lots of support around me, which meant I had lots of connections and networks that could support me through that. My younger brothers who went through that at a very young age, didn't have access to loads of support because it was just so difficult to get them into all of those different support networks. And what I'm finding is it's the charity sector that's having to pick it all up and try and close the gaps or fill in the gaps, just to make sure that those young people don't fall through the cracks while they're waiting for some of our more structural services to kick in for them. And I don't know what the fix is. Maybe the fix is that we are given more recognition by the government and by some of these major partners to operate properly and have set responsibilities that we take on to support young people. Or maybe it is that we're part of the consultation and the discussion around what we do with our services to improve them structurally for the future so that we don't have to pick up so much slack. But it is a challenge, and it is organisations like ours that are kind of left dangling. We don't always have huge amounts of funding, and if we do, we normally have to fight for it. But it's us that's normally the first ones here when young people really need us.
Mm. Yeah, and you're so important. I mean, to have a direct helpline for young people to call up at, whatever time and speak to somebody who can actually help them. If you're a parent out there and you feel like your kid needs a solution, and then you sort of look for solutions yourself, you'll find that Teenage Helpline are the very people that you want to be, assisting in what they're doing. So
Yeah,
if you've got any money out there, and if you've got big organizations that are looking for a smaller charity to fund, obviously these big corporations, they tend to make a choice once every 5 or 10 years about which charities to fund, and maybe it's time to reassess which charities you want to fund, and instead of maybe going after the bigger ones, which do already have a lot of funding, why not help the smaller ones, like Teenage Helpline? Josh, I don't mind if you don't want to talk about it, but what was it like losing your dad at such a young age?
um, it was a huge shock. So we knew there were health issues, but we were not expecting anything like that to happen as as quickly as it did. And I'm the oldest child, so all of my brothers are younger. There's five of us. My poor mum is very outnumbered. And so, for a long time, I took on quite, an additional role within the family to really help my mum with my younger brothers, and obviously with a lot of support from other family members and friends and close family friends too. But it's tough, and I feel lucky that I had access to a very, very good network of people who were willing to help me out and help me manage myself through that situation. So, it's obviously affected me. It would affect anybody, but I think it could have been a lot worse if I didn't have access to that kind of network, or we didn't have such a strong family connection. Me and my mum are very, very close. We speak to each other every day almost, and as much as they're teenage boys now, so they don't like to express it. We're also, we are all a very close family. You wouldn't know it because I wouldn't say it, but it is there, and that helps. But I think for without trying to make this another pitch for Teenage Helpline, without organisations and support networks out there, you know, it's much harder to have to go through something like that, which is a huge life change, a huge shock to the system, especially when you're not expecting it, by yourself or without any support, is, just it could just be absolutely horrendous. And I'm not saying it was easy at all because it wasn't, but having support around you does make it easier, and you suddenly feel less alone going through that situation. So I personally feel lucky that I had a good network of friends, colleagues, family that helped me through that situation. But it was obviously a very tough couple of years to kind of navigate yourself through. And it was the first person kind of in my family that I'd lost. There was a great granddad when I was really young, but that was the first person in that close to me that I'd ever lost, and it's even more shocking when it's kind of a parent. So having to navigate through it was tough, but like I say, lots of supportive people made it much easier for me.
Yeah, people need people, man. That's
Yes.
the truth. And obviously we do live in this sort of much more isolated world. I think just through the internet, we sort of take for granted the fact that, oh, everyone's around us and everyone's super, super connected. But actually, you can go, days and weeks and months, as we found out with the pandemic, to isolate yourself. And, isolation is a huge cause of mental illness,
Yeah.
mental problems. My experience during the pandemic is that I lost three people, three friends, three people that I loved, to suicide, which was really such an eye-opening experience for me because I've never known anyone that's died in a car accident, and to know three people that have taken their own lives, particularly during a period of time where we're supposed to be protecting ourselves and protecting each other. It seemed to me like that
Mm-hmm.
isolation and loneliness, which was mandated upon the people, actually has so much of a negative effect on many people's lives. And I don't necessarily think that we've really researched it enough and understood, what was the result on people's mental health, and other health issues from the pandemic. And reluctantly, I think the government have not wanted to put a spotlight on their decisions they made. But I do find that actually this is a something that we have to learn from. We have to realize that you can't just isolate people and push them into that prison of loneliness and not expect bad things to happen, negative consequences. Obviously, you were running Teenage Helpline during this time. And so, how do you feel that the pandemic affected people's mental health?
It's a really interesting question. So the pandemic was helpful for Teenage Helpline because we'd taken a bit of a break, and we actually used the time that we gained by being in lockdown to replan and put that plan back into action so that we could relaunch Teenage Helpline to young people. Um, I remember as if it was only yesterday, but it was, I hear, 4 years ago, we got the announcement when we went into lockdown. Well, 4 years ago, a week ago, wasn't it? And I remember as we were coming to the end of kind of lockdown and the pandemic, we were talking about the mental health pandemic. And lots of people were talking about it, but I don't think people really knew what the effects were going to be. And I still hear people talking about, you know, the effects of being isolated at the time, but actually we're still feeling the effects now, right? So if I bring it back to younger people, we need social connection to develop our social skills, our social abilities. And lots of young people lost up to 2 years of social development, um, and are now struggling to make friends, struggling to maintain friends, struggling to build, you know, professional relationships. Um, People who went to university who had to do their courses online, you know, as much as I know university is about further education and learning and getting a degree, it's also about that first time living by yourself and learning to be a grown up and learning all of those skills that, you know, you need when mum and dad or person who looks after you is not around to fry you your eggs or boil you your pasta and all of that stuff. And people lost all of that really critical, all those critical moments that they need to really learn how to be a grown up and how to grow up and move on through life. And that does have an effect on mental health when you start to struggle with basic things that you see other people finding easy because you weren't able to have those experiences. And I think, you know, was lockdown the right thing? Who knows? If we get into a situation again where we have to isolate ourselves because of um, some kind of pandemic or illness that's going around, I hope that we have taken some really strong learnings around what we need to do to make sure people are either better connected, that we're bridging the gap, or that we really look out for people and their mental health. Because, you know, you are not the only person who has a story to share around people that were lost during the pandemic due to suicide or mental health or other things. There's lots of people out there who have that story, and it's heartbreaking that, you know, that happened. And I really hope that whatever we've done to learn from COVID and the lockdown, mental health is strongly factored into that. And that if we ever find ourselves in that situation again, which touch wood, I hope we don't because it was awful. Um, we're better equipped to look after people mentally, not just from, you know, infectious diseases.
Hmm. And you know, I guess it reminds me of the reason why we share stories. You know, we share stories to warn people about certain things. You know, don't touch the fire. You know, don't try and take down a saber-toothed tiger by yourself. You know, it's
Yeah,
ancient. It's millions of years old. Our ability to tell stories. And those survivors who came back from that hunt passed on that vital information. One thing I'm finding
yeah,
about the mental health space, and certainly about news of suicide and depression, is that sometimes people don't like to share the statistics. They don't like to share the individual stories. Obviously, when it comes down to an individual's taking their own life, like the family themselves can be very sensitive towards people knowing about it. Charities themselves don't necessarily always get given the spotlight unless it's in trend. And then governments, particularly in this situation where they have a policy like lockdowns, maybe don't want to shine a light on it. Is there a problem? Is suicide and depression a greater problem than we all know? And is there a reason why we're not, all sharing stories about this?
I think so. Um, I think it's a huge problem, and you know, outside of my role with Teenage Helpline, I've done a lot around mental health in the workplace, and actually the focus is on people talking because we all know that mental health is still a taboo topic, even today when people are much more understanding and much more in the know about what mental health is, what mental ill health is. They understand that these things happen; they're not secrets anymore. But we still struggle to talk about our own mental health. And so I do think that it's a huge issue. And the solution is deep rooted within all of us, which is we need to be more open and honest around how we're feeling. And we need to be more willing to share our stories and get support when we think we might need it. You know, it's not be scared of reaching out for support. because it happens a lot. And I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's multiple people every single day are finding themselves in that situation where they feel like there is no better way to move forward than to not move forward.
Mm.
And unless it happens close to you, you don't really feel how much it's happening. I live in Southampton. I live near a bridge that is regularly closed by the emergency services for people who are stood there either attempting to or threatening to take their own life. And that's one bridge in an entire country or an entire world where this is happening all the time. And if you're not exposed to it and you're not around it, you don't know how much it's happening, and it is happening all the time.
Mm.
And I know I've already said it, and I don't like repeating myself, but it's just important that people talk. You know, even if you're feeling okay today, you might not be feeling okay tomorrow. And mental ill health doesn't need to be a condition like depression where you're down all the time. Sometimes it can be a trigger that causes something short term. It might be something in life where, you've never had depression before. Let's stick with a depression example, and something happens like the loss of a parent. We've spoken about that today as well. And you end up with short term effects, and it makes you think differently and it makes you act differently. And then eventually you might move past that and get back to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But we should talk about that, and we should know about that, so that if our friends or our family or our colleagues are feeling that, we can look out for them and help them. But until we all start talking and we all start sharing how we're feeling, we're not going to get to that place.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, you provide a service to young people to share stories and have these conversations. And can you tell me a little bit about some of your favorite sort of stories from Teenage Helpline? Where would you say that your proudest moments have come from?
Um, it's hard to call them my favorite because normally they start from sad places, but there have been some really positive stories. And there was one of the ones that I know very well is back in the original days of Teenage Helpline, before we relaunched. It was just me and a few friends, and we had this young person who would talk to me for years. I think it was about 2 years, and it was absolutely horrendous when we had to kind of shut things down, because we did close a charity for a little while where we planned and thought and relaunched it. Um, and I remember one of my proudest moments was not actually the relaunch of Teenage Helpline back in November 2020. It was a couple of days later when that young person who spoke to me for years before we stopped reached back out and asked for support again, and had actually been waiting for us to come back, because they'd clearly benefited from what we were doing so much that the as soon as they saw we were back, that was it. It was right. I need to reach out, and I need to reestablish that relationship and get that mentoring going again. Um, and we handed that over to a mentor, because it used to be me, and it was more appropriate for a young person to take it on. And I'm not sure how much longer this young person engaged with Teenage Heartburn off the top of my head, but it was a while. And that was, a really proud moment of mine.
Mm.
And another proud moment of mine was when we were interviewing for some mentors at one point, and one of the interviewees, when asked why Teenage Helpline, why are you interested, said, "I've benefited from support like this, and now I want to give that support." So I don't think they got support from Teenage Helpline, but they got support from a helpline for their difficulties that they were facing. They've seen themselves through it. They got themselves to a better place, and their reflection was, now that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that other people in my situation get the same support. Um, and they came and mentored with us and took on some cases with young people. So, we've we've got lots to be proud of as a charity. Like I said to you earlier, we've got over 300 case studies that have all been, you know, successful, have all had strong partnerships between the young person and the mentor, and
Mm.
they sometimes they exchange one email, sometimes they exchange 100 emails, sometimes even more. And they they get on and they get what they need. And so we've got lots to be proud of. But those are two things that really stick in my mind.
That's amazing, man. That's really inspiring. And I hope that anyone listening out there who is interested in giving back, gaining a few karma points, but also learning from the younger generation. If anyone wants to get involved with Teenage Helpline and become a mentor, how can they go about doing this, Josh?
So if you head over to our website, which is teenagehelpline.org.uk, you'll find all sorts of information on there, depending on what you're interested in looking for. But you'll also find our careers page, and it will tell you all of the different roles that we have available at Teenage Helpline. What is really important to note is not just our mentors who are volunteers. Our entire team is run by volunteers. So it doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter if you're not 16 to 25. There's plenty of volunteering roles that you could take on and really support us to get to the next level. We've got legal opportunities, finance opportunities, HR opportunities listed at the moment. As we talk today, there's all sorts of different things that you could take on as a volunteer if you came and joined our team. And it's important to me and to the rest of the team, that lead Teenage Helpline, that we give something back to our volunteers too. So you're giving your time for free. We're getting something out of you and we don't have to pay you. So we need to give you something. And we really are trying to push around, well, what is it that our volunteers get out of working with us? And we know it's development, we know it's skills growth, we know it's that sense of accomplishment because they're giving something back. But we're hoping that the opportunities that we put out there will allow somebody to come in and get some experience and take that next leap in their career, or develop that skill that they've really wanted to develop for years and years and haven't had the opportunity yet. It's not just about coming in and giving some time for free and enabling some young people to get some support. There is also us giving back to our volunteers through what they gain with those opportunities too.
Amazing, man. I mean, dude, what you're doing is so incredible. Honestly, like I've spoken to a parent who lost their young daughter to suicide, and I've never felt so alive with compassion and empathy and sadness for what a parent will have to go through. And so I just want to tell you that, I'm very proud of you, man, and I know your dad would be proud of you. I'm sure your mum's very proud of you. You'll never know the amount of children's lives that you've saved through Teenage Helpline, but I can assure you that it's many. And so all I hope is that people can join you and your mission and get involved as well, because I think until you lose someone that you love, you don't know how bad it feels, and it is a one-way door. There's no going back once you lose someone. So yeah, I'm really proud of you, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, anything else you want to talk about? I know that we could talk for hours and hours and hours, but I'm conscious of your time. Got to get you back to those very important tasks.
Indeed, I don't think I think you've asked me lots of questions and covered lots of different bases. No, I really appreciate the time you've taken to chat with me, and it's nice to give Teenage Helpline a bit more of a platform and share it more with lots of different people who might want to learn about what we do. So no, I've hugely appreciated this 45 minutes that we've had chatting with each other, and just thank you for giving us the opportunity to share more about what we do.
Not at all, my friend, not at all. Well, listen, we connected together because, of this mad world of mental health. But hopefully, we can work together for many, many years to come. And of course, I'd be there to offer my services and my mentorship if I'm young enough. I don't know, I'm 31, so I almost feel like I've got a bit too old, but I'm very useful with a camera. And so hopefully I can help you guys market Teenage Helpline as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Josh, thank you so much. That's a wrap. That's a wrap.
Brilliant.